Today's episode is going to be short but sweet, and it's going to be just me talking to you. So I certainly don't want to bore you for an hour, but I kind of wanted to discuss the five mistakes I see women making in perimenopause. I've been working in this space now for a few years, and while there are many experiences of menopause, and actually each and every woman has their own unique individual experience. Excuse me. Sorry about that. I've noticed that there are some common misconceptions, missteps that are a common denominator in a lot of women's lives. So today I'm going to just kind of talk about those briefly so that you can get on with your day, but just to kind of get you thinking about like, am I doing that? Or, oh yeah, that's totally me. Or, I never even thought of that before. So the first thing I want to talk about is that I feel like we're not talking about perimenopause. In most cases, we talk about menopause, which is that day that you've reached 12 months of going without a period. But nobody really talks about, and we're just really starting to see, and I know my algorithms are showing me nothing but menopause and perimenopause, but I feel like we're just starting to get into the topic of what happens before menopause. And it's very similar to puberty in that I know in my own personal experience and raising two girls that there are many, many months, probably even a year or two, maybe more, of a lot of feelings and a lot of changes going on before you actually have your first period. And so if you look at perimenopause, same rings true. There's a lot of things going on for a very large number of time and a very, very large number of days that this happens. And so if women on average reach menopause at the age of 51, that means that some women might experience menopause in their mid to late 50s or even in their early to mid to late 40s. It's a bell curve, right? But perimenopause is the time before you've reached that 12-month mark. And that can last anywhere from 5 to 10 years. So if you were to go into menopause at the age of 45, you could start seeing symptoms in your mid 30s. And I don't think we're talking about this enough with women. And, there's still that, oh, you're too young to be worried about menopause. No, my friends, no, you're not. And it starts to creep in sneaky. Sorry about that. Hang on. Let me fix this microphone. I just hit my microphone. Um, okay. And it starts to sneak in little ways and it starts to creep into your life and affect little ways that it happens into your life that you don't even see it happening, right? So a lot of women say, oh, hot flashes and night sweats. Well, but what about the sleep disturbances? What about waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning riddled with anxiety, or just waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning and being wide awake? What about irregular cycles, starting to have your period come? If you were clockwork, some women, they're lucky enough to say, oh, every X amount of days I had a period. But in perimenopause, you start seeing them happen more frequently, or they're heavier, or they're coming farther apart. And so it's not just this gradual decline of how often you're having a period, it's all over the place. And so there are these little things that might come before hot flashes and night sweats. And the night sweats might come before hot flashes. You may never even have the vasomotor symptoms. You might just have heart palpitations, frozen shoulder, joint aches, hair loss, itchy skin, itchy ears. Me personally, oh my gosh, the itchy ears are driving me crazy. But you might experience things that are different than the symptoms that they would make fun of on a sitcom show. The second thing that I see women making a mistake with in perimenopause is as the weight starts to creep on, or your clothes aren't fitting as well, or your weight is redistributing in your body differently than it was before. You think, I'm going to go back to what I did in my 20s. I'm going to go back to give it the old college try, right? The eat less, move more, run for hours, stop eating carbohydrates, eat a 900 calorie diet, liquid only diet, shake for breakfast, shake for lunch, sensible dinner, all the things. And it's not working. And the harder you try, the more the weight just seems to stick on. And I'm here to tell you that you got to change the game. It's not the same. We actually need to be making sure we're eating enough. It's so funny. I mean, there's like these two camps I'm seeing with clients. There's the camp that does, eat more than they metabolically than they There is the camp of those who eat more than metabolically necessary, and they're gaining weight with that. And a lot of times it's simple, like mindless snacking, or you don't really know that a serving of nuts isn't a half a cup, or while you're cooking, you're licking spoons and not thinking about it, or like, eating peanut butter by the spoonful, those kind of things. Just not necessarily knowing the caloric density of things. But a lot of us aren't eating enough, and that sends our body into stress. And with that stress comes cortisol, and the weight is staying on in ways that it hasn't before. And it's kind of this vicious cycle. Like the more you try, the more stressed out you get about it, the more stressed you get, the harder it is to lose the weight. So that's another mistake I see women trying to make, that's another mistake I see women making more often in perimenopause. Number 3 is that women in perimenopause have just resigned themselves to being XYZ. Like, resigned yourself to being tired, resigned yourself to being angry all the time, resigned yourself to feeling a certain way in your clothes, resigned to, have a low libido. It's just part of getting older, right? We've heard that actually from our healthcare practitioners. So of course, that's a very common mistake women make. They just resign themselves to this is the way life is just going to be as I'm getting older. Number 4, ladies, we are old enough and we've been on this planet long enough. We've been in our bodies long enough, but we are not educating ourselves about our situation with perimenopause. We're not educating ourselves enough about hormones and how they act in our bodies and what happens to them during the menopause transition. We're not educating ourselves about nutrition or stress mitigation or having good sleep hygiene. These are some things that we all need to spend a little bit more time becoming more knowledgeable about, because you can't just take a pill and have it all go away. You really need to start taking care of your whole body. And so when women start to correct this mistake and they start to educate themselves, then they also become more empowered in their doctor's offices, and they understand the options that are available to them in ways of, you know, prescriptive care, in different types of exercise, in, you know, meditation. A lot of us, believe that all that stuff is too woo woo. We don't need any of that. Well, actually, some breathing techniques could go a long way in stress mitigation. Our resiliency to stress is so down in the bottom, in the bottom of the barrel. We are dealing with stress resiliency. And if we find ways to mitigate that stress that speak to us, journaling, walking outside, breath work, having apps on our phone, listening to calming stories, those are all things that we need to educate ourselves on. And the last thing, the number 5 of my top 5 mistakes women are making in perimenopause is that they're doing it alone. They're either not talking about it because they feel like it's a taboo subject or they're embarrassed. Some women are afraid to talk about what they're experiencing because they're afraid it could affect their job or their attractiveness to another person. There's also this feeling of as I'm getting older and I hit this point, I'm becoming irrelevant. And that's something that's really hard for women to deal with. So they don't want to talk about it. Some women live in silent shame or anger that it's coming or that it's already started. Some women aren't ready for it to come and it's coming at you like a freight train, whether you want it to or not. And so you have to be understanding for yourself and the more you open up about what's going on with you, the more grace you'll be able to give yourself. And I think that having a community, having a support network, having a coach, I provide many resources to women. I provide more free advice and help and links to things that I probably should from a business standpoint. But when you start to open up to me about what's really going on inside and having that space to be heard, it can be really liberating and it can also really help you manage those symptoms and process the transition. And then when you start talking about it with other women, nobody wants to talk about it. But now that I my 13-year-old says all the time, "Oh, you're a menopause coach. Menopause, menopause, menopause. That's all you ever talk about." We go to a store and somebody runs into you and you're talking about menopause and you pick me up from the dance studio and there's a woman telling you about her hot flashes. And I'm thankful for that. And in the beginning, honestly, to tell you the truth, I was a little nervous that one, I'm too young to be talking about this. Two, that women wouldn't want to talk about it. Or three, that, like this is something that isn't necessary. But as more people that I'm around know what I do and they know what I'm talking about, they come up to me and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I had like the itchiest scalp, or I had a frozen shoulder for 6 months and I went on hormone therapy and I'm feeling so much better." Or, I listened to you talk about your own journey and how you had to find a different doctor in order to actually get the kind of care that you wanted that made a difference, that changed your life. Then I decided that the doctor wasn't necessarily always right. Maybe my doctor just didn't have the training. And so I went and found another doctor. So the more we're talking about this, the more we're normalizing the conversation. And, I was talking to someone today about the fact that they've had a runny nose. And then it's like, oh, I remember my grandma always had a tissue in her sleeve. There was always, like, the Kleenex down the sleeve, and whenever, one of us little grandkids would have a boogie or something, she'd, like, pull the and it was I mean, I know now it was always clean, but it always was, like, crumpled up, and you're like, "What? Grandma, ah," um, but she probably had a runny nose from menopause. She never was talking about it. My great-grandma, my grandma, they both had hysterectomies when they were really young, and so it's hard to say familial wise, like, what my experience was gonna be. And, I mean, if I ask my mother specific questions, she'll tell me, but it's just not something that you talk about over dinner. And, especially younger, previous generations, my apologies, previous generations. Let me say that again. Especially previous generations, they didn't talk about it and they just suffered through it. And it was just part of getting older and it was miserable and it is what it is, right? But there's power in numbers and there's power in speaking the story. And it doesn't mean that you need to be put out to pasture. It doesn't mean that you should lose your job because you're having hot flashes. But I think when people start to understand that this is common, I mean, if we're blessed enough to get to this age, then we are going to experience some form of this, right? Some form of symptoms of menopause. Now, there's 15% of us who will get through it unscathed. Bless you. The rest of us here are in a state of misery. My ears are constantly itching. My hair, since I went on hormone therapy, my hair is finally coming back, but my hair was thinning. It was horrible. I use an estrogen cream on my face, but before then, I felt like my skin was just like cracking and not pliable and just looked so much older than I was. The fatigue hits you like a train, and we have this hustle culture where we feel like if we take a nap or we rest, we're going to, be lazy. These are all things that when we start talking about them, they don't seem so abnormal anymore. And it feels okay to say, there are a couple days in the month where I feel like I can't get off the couch. I am so tired. I recently posted a question on Threads asking if there is a perimenopause symptom that you experienced that you didn't realize was associated with perimenopause until, and once you found out it was associated with perimenopause, it was like, oh, you had your aha moment. I am currently, as I am talking to you about this, I have 682 comments on that post. And it has been less than a month since I posted it. It's been a few weeks, but less than a month. And people are still posting on it. So when we start having this conversation, it leads to somebody else saying, oh my gosh, me too. Or, oh, I didn't even realize that was a symptom of that. And so when we make the mistake of keeping quiet and going through it alone and suffering it alone, or living in this shame cave of not wanting to talk about it because you don't want to admit it's something that's happening to you, I think we're not only doing ourselves a disservice, but we're staying in this space of youth is, youth is beauty and youth is relevance. And women should just grow old and sit in the back and, play quiet. These are all narratives that are created by other people for us. And I don't think they need to be they need to be had anymore. And the more we give power to our own voice, the less we give power to those voices. So if that's a reason why women are staying quiet, we need to break that down. We need to crumble that into little tiny pieces and sweep it up and put it in the trash. So I told you I'd keep this brief. Right now, I'm looking pretty good. I don't want to keep babbling and chase on into trails of nonsense that you have to listen to when I start to babble off into tangents. I'm going to keep this very specific and brief. But let me know what you think. Do you think that there are other common misconceptions? Are there other mistakes that you've made in your journey that you think I should add to this list? Or do you think this is a pretty good list? The nope, sorry, you're not too young. This could be happening to you. The denial of it. The going back to doing the things that used to work for you before to feel better, lose weight, fit in your clothes, etc. Not educating yourself, not knowing enough about your body and what's happening right now to advocate for your health, going it alone, living in that shame quiet closet, not wanting to talk about it, or resigning yourself to this is just the way it is. It's the way it's going to be. This is the way it was for my mom. This is the way it's going to be for me. I didn't say those in order. Crap. Okay. Let me go back. So, what do you think? What are What are your take? What why am I just not I'm not feeling it today. I'm sorry. Okay. I apologize that you have to sit here and listen to this. Ugh, maybe you'll like the conversations I have with other people better because I don't do this in those as much. Okay. Okay, so what do you think? What what do you think about these top 5 mistakes I see women in perimenopause making? Do you agree? Do you think that there are things that should be on this list? I want to hear from you. I want you to tell me, yeah, you're spot on, or oh no, there's also this. Don't forget this. Because I feel like having this conversation is going to keep us moving forward, right? So again, the top 5 mistakes that I think women make in perimenopause are that they're in denial, that they're old enough for this to be happening to them. Sorry, ladies. You're not crazy. You're not too young. It's probably perimenopause. 2, they keep going back to these same old things they used to do when they wanted to lose weight, feel better in their clothes, et cetera, et cetera. 3, you have resigned yourself to just being the way it is. This is the way it is. It's the way my mom experienced it, my grandma experienced it. I'm going to be miserable. I'm going to gain weight. I'm going to be uncomfortable, hot flashes. I'm going to just live in this misery. It is what it is. 4, you're not educating yourself. You're not empowering yourself with the knowledge of what is going on in your body and how in the heck can we fix it. And last, but certainly not least, you're trying to go it alone. Hopefully, in listening to this podcast, you have a sense of community already around you, but there's power in numbers, ladies. The more we have these conversations, the better off I think we're all going to be. So until next week, think of your misconceptions, mistakes, things that you could tweak a little bit on your journey. Let me know. And next week, I want to get into why all of this isn't our fault, right? It's not always our fault. Maybe not if you ask my kids sometimes, but that's another topic. That's another episode for another day. I digress. Okay. I will check on you guys on social media. I can't wait to hear what you have to say about this episode. And I look forward to doing another one on these kind of topics later. Let's keep the conversation going, ladies.